Hey, what's up guys? This is Prashant and thank you for joining me in this video. In this video, I'll introduce Kedro elements. So it is very important to understand Kedro elements. Now, before we take a look into Kedro elements, let's first create our Kedro projects. You can create a new and empty project by answering a series of questions, and to do this, type Kedro new command. Now, here we need to specify the project name. Let's say our project name is demo project. Hit enter. Next, it is asking us the repository name and we will use the same name that we have specified as the project name. Even you can see here, it is recommending us the same name as a default one. So we will go ahead with the same and we'll just hit enter here. Now we need to provide a Python package name. Here also it is recommended to use the same name and we will use the same and hit enter. Now with Kedro new command, we got the project structure created and you can see the same in Visual Studio Code. You can see here a bunch of folders got created such as conf, data, docs, logs, notebooks and SRC. Along with that, there are a bunch of files also got created. We will take a look at them later in this video when we refer the Kedro elements one by one, or even few of the elements we will explain in details when we will go through the examples in future videos. There are 4 basic Kedro elements and these are data catalog, nodes, pipelines and runners. Now the very first Kedro element that we will look is data catalog. What is data catalog? Data catalog is a registry of all data sources that project can use. Now the question arises where we can define our data catalog. So as we can see here, the structure that got generated has a conf directory and this conf directory has a base and local directory. So let's take a look at the base first, and inside this base directory we can see the catalog.yaml, logging.yaml and the parameters.yaml. Now let's take a look at catalog.yaml. The file catalog.yaml contains the data catalog definition which points out dataset file path. So whatever the dataset that we use throughout the life cycle of our project, we store that data catalog definition inside catalog.yaml. And it contains the path of our datasets. What is the type of our dataset? Now the next file is logging.yaml. This file uses Python's default logging library to set up logging. And the third is the parameter.yaml. So this file allows us to define the parameters for machine learning experiments, such as train and test fleet and the number of iteration or any other parameter that we wanted to use within our lifecycle. These are the files that are available inside the base folder, and this contains a project specific settings which shares across the different users. Now let's take a look at what is inside the local. This local subfolder is used for a setting that should not be shared, such as credentials or some kind of custom editor configuration. So as you can see here, a demo file that is credentials.yaml is there, and you can store your dataset into the S3 and you can specify the credentials here. And with these credentials, Kedro will be able to access our dataset using the provided access key and access key ID. Now what data folder contains? Data folder contains a local project data, and this data will not be committed to our version control system. And this data folder has a folder inside it. You can see here raw, intermediate, primary, features, model input, models, model output and reporting. The raw folder contains the initial start of pipeline data that is being used. What raw contains? It's as name suggests, it contains the raw data that our machine learning pipeline requires. The intermediate, it can be any kind of semi-processed data that we can keep inside intermediate. And primary, you can say it like I have processed my data completely and then we have performed cleans, transforms and wrangled data either from the raw or from the intermediate dataset. And that data basically after processed, we can store inside this primary. So like this, we will go through each of these in upcoming videos. So this is how we define our data catalog. There are 2 basic folders that are associated with the data catalog. Is like one is the configuration, which contains the configuration about the data catalog, and second is the data directory, which is a physical location of our dataset. Now let's take a look at the second component, which is nodes. What is node? Node is a wrapper for a function that takes input and produce output. So let's consider you have one function which takes input data frame and it produces output data frame. Now we can use this function inside a node. And this node has basic three parameters. One is like the function that does the job, the name of input, and the name of output. Now this name of input and name of output, which comes from data catalog. And we already had a look what is data catalog, where we can store the definition of data catalog and where we store the actual data set. Now let's take a look at the pipeline. So what is pipeline? Pipeline is a collection of nodes which does a particular specific node execution. As we already looked, a node which takes the function input dataset and output dataset. So this function takes an input dataset which does some kind of pre-processing and produces an output dataset name, and this output dataset will be fed into the another node which does another job, kind of another pre-processing we can say, and produce another dataset. So like this we can have a multiple number of pipelines, and again we will have the same structure here, and all these pipelines are interconnected with similar as the nodes are interconnected. That means the output provided by this node will be the input for this node, and this is how we define the pipeline. So let's consider this pipeline is a data engineering pipeline, and this is a modeling pipeline, you can say. Now let's take a look at the fourth element, that is runners. Runners are responsible to run the pipeline, and there are three types of runners available that can run the pipeline. The very first and default one is the sequential runner, which execute the node sequentially. Means one node execution completed, then only the other node execution, the next node execution will be started. Then the second type of runner is the parallel runner. This runs the node in a parallel. So the nodes which are independent can be run at the same time will be run parallelly by parallel runner. Another third type of runner is thread runner. It is similar to the parallel runners, but it utilizes the multi-thread concept. That means like the number of processes that you have in your system, it will utilize and it will try to run those number of threads based on independent node that you have. That's all about this video. In the next video, we will explore the Kedro project structure in more detail, where we will do hands-on using the Iris example.